Hello, welcome along. This is episode 58 of Adventures in Pop. My name's Simon Jacobs. It always has been and always will be, and you are very welcome. I'm going to talk in this episode a little bit about, it's going to sound a bit dull, but it's not dull at all, I promise you. I'm going to talk about copyright and collaboration in songwriting. And there's been a few things that popped up that have just been really interesting. So we'll reflect on that, and I'll just give you a little update on where I am with a whole load of releases. So complicated that I've had to put a spreadsheet together. Okay, so where to start? Let's talk about the interesting area of copyright and how that works with collaboration and using things from other people's songs and all that kind of stuff. You might be aware, the starting point, you might be aware that Ed Sheeran and his co-writers won an important court case last week around the question about whether they had been plagiarising other people's songs. I mean, this was not the first time it's come up for him, and he was quite keen, I think, to go to court and defend his artistic credibility, and make the case that his work, the work that he wrote with his co-writers, was original and not copied, and then not credited to another artist. So I don't want to get into the ups and downs and pros and cons of Ed Sheeran's case, because I should imagine apparently it was kind of 3 years going through the court. So we haven't got time to talk about that for 3 years, have we? Let's keep it simple. It was just interesting. Look, I'm not a great Ed Sheeran fan. I mean, I don't dislike him. I just think I just don't get it. I'm a bit surprised that he's so globally huge. I mean, in a way, I guess it's the same as my feelings towards Adele. I like her, but I'm still a bit I'm still taken aback by the magnitude of the performance. So look, good on Ed. I mean, I've got no worries about that. But he did an interview with the BBC, with Newsnight last week. I just happened to be watching. On comes Ed, and I found it really fascinating. I don't think I've ever really seen him, be interviewed, and he was. It felt like he was coming back from quite a dark place with his co-writer through this whole court battle, of feeling that his credibility as a songwriter, was seriously, potentially being really undermined by personal persons popping up every now and again, to sue him. And it's almost like the bigger the hit he had, the more likely it was that someone was going to pop out of the woodwork and have a go at claiming that that there was something from their music that he'd copied. Now, he won that court case. Let's be really clear. He won the court case, and I'm kind of glad he did, because I think there is integrity in his side of the argument. And so, what I think of his music is actually irrelevant. What came across, I thought he was really sincere. I think he'd been bruised. It sounded like he had real integrity. He really cared about this stuff. And the thing that really leapt out at me, which is a slight teeny side issue, but it's worth saying for all you people who do write songs and are interested in making progress in the music industry. Now look, he's the most successful artist in the world at the moment, so he can work the way he wants to work. So he has his co-writer, and I think and who he's obviously very loyal to, and they work together in a studio. And we saw a few clips of kind of the writing process. So he's writing with his co-writer, but there are also other engineers around who are, as the ideas are coming up, they're kind of almost feeding them in real time into the computer to hear it and then maybe change it a little bit. I thought it was very interesting, having a little team on hand. I mean, as you have the idea that they're getting it down and making sure it doesn't get lost. I don't have any such team, and so yeah, I'm sure my best ideas have been lost. Anyone's going to say that, aren't they? I don't know if that's true or not true, but there's always that danger they're just going to slip away before you've kind of committed them to anything. Anyway, just in passing, Ed Sheeran just happened to say, on an average day of songwriting, he and his partner would probably write 5 songs. Just let that sink in. 5 songs. I mean, if I'd written 5 songs in a day, I wouldn't. By the end of the day, I wouldn't be able to remember what the first 2 were. So I hope it's all being recorded properly. And then anyway, the next day when I come back to it, I think, well, why did I write that? So anyway, listen, I think that's extraordinary, and it must say something about, well, obviously the prolific nature of his output. So I thought that was really impressive. But the other thing he said was that now that this business has come up with, the potential for him to be sued, for litigation to pop up every now and again, particularly when he's had a really enormous monster hit like Shape of You. What he started doing is filming every single day that he's songwriting. So the whole thing is committed to film. So if he needs to afterwards turn up in court and prove that X is X and Y is Y, he's actually got it all on film. That's kind of interesting and kind of sad, isn't it, really? That one has got to a point where it's necessary to be collecting the evidence as you go along. I think that seems like a shame to me, but it obviously isn't doing him any harm now, and I guess he gets into a groove of doing that, and maybe he can just forget that the cameras are there and get on with honing his craft and being a blooming successful songwriter. So that was one thing, and the other thing, and this I can kind of relate to, and it's happened to me just maybe on one occasion that I was really aware of, is that when they've finished writing a song, sometimes they will pause, kind of take a bit of a step back and just kind of check that they wrote it, if you see what I mean. They need to check that it actually came from them. Again, I think that's slightly sad, isn't it? But probably a really useful way of avoiding trouble, before you just kind of step in. Because look, here's the thing. We are influenced, aren't we, by everything we've ever heard in our lives that feeds into the next thing we're going to write. And the question is only how directly does it feed in? Because of course we're influenced. I'm sure, look, listen, when I was little, I listened to classical music because my parents took me to the classical thing. I mean, I was mostly very bored, but I listened to a lot. I listened to bubblegum, Sweet and Slade. I listened to Motown and soul music, and those beautiful vocal groups from the 70s. I was listening to heavy rock. I was listening to punk. I mean, it all just kind of went in somewhere, and of course it's going to influence, isn't it? So they do that thing of checking, standing back and finish the song. Is there anything on here that suggests something else where they need to just go and check and make sure that, to the best of its ability, this is original? One of the points that Ed Sheeran makes, I thought was really interesting, is he just says, listen, there are 12 notes in an octave, and go and count them in the black and the white keys. 12 notes. How many permutations and variations of those 12 notes are we ever going to be able to come up with? Probably you can make a case for saying that every song has already been written. And I know that sounds a little bit, like I've probably had a little bit too much tea this afternoon, but do you know what I mean? It's like if 60,000 songs every day are being uploaded to Spotify, what are the chances that 2 of them are almost exactly the same? It can't be that crazy. So these things are going to happen, whether it's the subconscious, whether you're kind of doing it on purpose, or whether it's just all those influences that you carry with you. People talk about appropriating other works, other cultures' works, and obviously, we've got to be really careful about stuff like that. But at the same time, if an idea comes to you and you think that's my idea, and it might be your take on something you're carrying in your head and you don't really know where it comes from, it can't be wrong to explore it and push it as far as it can go. Now, one time I think this happened to me. If you go back to my second album, I'm sounding very seasoned these days. If you go back to my second album, there's a track on there, Ghosts. Now, I remember very clearly writing that. It came in a rush. I was very excited. I thought, oh, this is quite good. I sat there and, got all the bare bones of it down in one go, the words, everything, and sat there and thought, that's a good day's work. It actually probably took an hour or two, and the whole thing was there. And then I had a slight concern, and a genuine slight concern that it was familiar, that I'd heard it before, and therefore it can't be mine. Where was it from? And I remember sitting there for a long time thinking, what have I done here? And then wrongly actually, I decided that maybe I'd written another track from Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. And what I mean by that is maybe there was a track on Rumours, and I actually went to listen to the whole album to double check this. Was there a track on Rumours that was essentially the same as what I'd just written? In other words, had I just copied something straight out of the kind of the most successful album of the blooming 1970s by Fleetwood Mac? Because if I had, then really I can't take that song any further. That would be the end of it. So I went back and listened to, as I say, the whole of Rumours. I mean, I felt a bit of an idiot doing this, but I thought I've got to know. And sure enough, I hadn't plagiarised it from Rumours. I hope I haven't plagiarised from anywhere at all. I think I wrote it. And you can see there's that hesitation now. This is like the VAR equivalent for music, isn't it? It's like you score the goal, but then you need to spend 10 minutes checking as to whether it really is a goal or not. That's what that's like. It's that kind of delay of thinking, oh, I've written something really good. Hang on, I might not have. So it's a tricky one. Now, look, where this gets, even more kind of complicated in terms of, breaking the rules, breaking the law, getting into trouble, and there have been some, notable cases where it's gone the other way from the way that Ed Sheeran's case turned out. So, Ed Sheeran won his case. He did not plagiarise. Let's go back to, you remember Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke and Pharrell and whoever else was on that. Let's not talk about the video. We're not going to discuss that. But they got sued by the Marvin Gaye estate for lifting the kind of the essence, the rhythm, the tempo, and the kind of the feel, the vibe of that song from a Marvin Gaye track called "Got to Give It Up," and the judgment was found in favour of the Marvin Gaye estate, and I think again, kind of rightly so. It's not illegal to borrow the vibe, the rhythm, those aspects that kind of make that one a hit. You can borrow it, but you've got to credit it, and therefore, with crediting it, it has to get paid. That person or that estate, wherever it is, they have got to get a cut of the total royalties from that track. So there's nothing wrong with recreating a vibe that going out of your way to use that influence and put it onto your song, but you must credit it. So you've got to say, this is where I got that from. Now that's different from using a sample. It's not a sample. It's borrowing the influences, if you like. So sampling is different. You've got to get permission to get a sample. And obviously then you still have to credit and all the rest of it. But if you're thinking, I love what they do there. I'm not going to just record it and put it onto my track, but I'm going to copy the style of it. That's absolutely fine, but you must credit it. So that was one that went against the big hit makers. I'm sure the older people watching this remember My Sweet Lord, the big case in the 1970s with George Harrison and the Phil Spector organisation, which George Harrison lost, which I think was quite harsh because it was only three chords, which I think are three very common chords that come up in loads and loads of songs. So I think that was a bit of a I think that was a scary moment for the music industry, thinking, oh my goodness, better not use those chords or not in that order with that sound on or in that inversion. So tricky times. So I think, where does this lead us? Where does this get to us? I think, and this is a conversation I've been having with my own musical partners from time to time, is the simplest thing. I have actually been to look this up recently because it's just been really interesting. The simplest and wisest and sensiblest thing in any case is to ensure that the people in the room at the time a song is being recorded or being written rather, they just get an equal cut. Don't make this complicated. It will get complicated if people start faffing about with little shares of the pie. So in the case of let's imagine that Blurred Lines was written by Robin Thicke, Pharrell, and the Marvin Gaye estate. Well, just divide it. Third. Come on. It's not that difficult. And it should be divided equally. Why? And here's the thing where I think it gets quite interesting, which is when you're writing something, when you're writing a song together in a collaborative way, you don't know which one of you is going to come up with, if either of you are, is going to come up with the bit that makes it work. And it's so random and impossible to define that there's no point trying to say, hang on, but you wrote more words in the first verse, and okay, but I wrote the chords in the chorus, and I put that bit that goes like this on it. Don't do it. Where would you get to if you were trying to divide it up in terms of how much I contributed to this song? I think it would get to being a fight in every song, wouldn't it? Because I'd be thinking, hang on, no, I don't want your bit to go in. I want my bit to go in. Hang on, let me just think. Hang on, let me think of something better than what you do. And you'd start getting into a artist versus artist thing, where actually the one thing you should be doing in that room is thinking, how do we make this song great? Not who did it. And one of the things I've said recently, and I think I'd stand by it, is that one person could write almost the whole song, and the other person could be sitting in the corner, filing their nails and playing around on Instagram, and then suddenly they could come out with something that is brilliant and is the moment that song becomes a good song. And that might take them 5 seconds. But who did most of the work? Well, it's probably the person who didn't come up with that. But it wouldn't be right then for them to get a bigger cut. And who knows what the thing is that people like? You don't know until it's released. So 50-50. I read a really interesting article where it said an artist, this was written by, I think, a copyright lawyer, who said an artist came to her and said, yeah, but I wrote more than him, so I should get more of the royalties, shouldn't I? And she said, do you want to work with that person ever again? I thought it was a very good answer. Just don't make it complicated. So yeah, it's got to be 50-50. And interestingly, if I think back through the many years of the Rothman-Jacobs relationship, I don't think we ever even talked about it. I think it was just an assumption. We argued plenty about what went in the song, but we didn't argue about who did it afterwards. That just you don't want to do that. You don't want to start out with tricky contracts that divide you rather than pull you together to be that trusting relationship that Ed Sheeran obviously has with the guy he writes with, who I think was in Snow Patrol. Very good. Anyway, I was very impressed with them, and I wish them all the best. So look, I know it's a bit of a ramble, but it's so interesting because the irony is, of course, is that when you start out, you might end up arguing about the value of zero, because I've written lots of songs here. I've written things with Goldhawk Foxes, with Rothman Jacobs, but to begin with, and for some extended period, what's the value? The value really is zero until anything happens. It's just that when something happens, you need to make sure you've got a really solid understanding in place, and that's quite important. And so I think the advice from any lawyers is get all that stuff sorted before you even start, and just make sure you've got a very clear understanding of how those things work. All right, let's leave it there. Now, look, I just want to say one thing. Because we're now getting into a period where I'm going to be releasing a bunch of things from my three different outputs. It got so complicated that, guess what? As I said before, I had to actually kind of commit to paper what was coming out when and what needed to be done with color coding. Now, look, it's not really a spreadsheet because I can't really do spreadsheets, but it's as good as, and I'm going to show you. So what this basically says is at the end of this month, a couple of weeks, there will be the third release from Rothman and Jacobs. That's already set up to go, and it's called Picture in My Dreams, and I know you're going to love that. Then I think there will be a follow-up Goldhawk Foxes single a couple of weeks later, and a week later after that, I'm planning on having the first of my new releases from my album, which I think is probably going to be called 5. Don't tell anyone though. So a lot to do. So, and the reason I put it down on paper is, yeah, I can write down the release dates, but it's more than that, isn't it? I have to think, when do I need to have the master ready? When do I need to have the video ready? When do I need to think about what promotion I'm doing, etc., etc. So actually, because there's more than one going at a time, I had to get that written down. Just to make sure it's all there. Listen, it's been lovely talking to you. I hope that's been interesting and instructive. I will be back with some new material. I've got plenty. It's just I wasn't quite sure whether talk about this today because the Ed Sheeran thing is quite fresh in the mind, and it's quite interesting. And I've got a couple of issues with album 5 in that I have too many songs. I know that sounds like a big brag, but what it means is I'm left in a couple of areas where I'm thinking, is it this one or is it this one? What I might do is ask you that question, and maybe next time round I'm going to ask you to give me some advice, A or B. We'll do that next time. Hey, listen, have a good Easter or Passover or Ramadan, whatever it is you're doing to celebrate a long weekend in whatever part of the world you're in. Take it easy. Be good. See you next time. Bye-bye.